Madam Secretary, thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you, Wolf.
Let's talk about Iran right now. The #3 diplomat at the State Department is meeting this weekend with high-ranking Iranian officials. Now, until now, the U.S. position was there would be no such meeting on nuclear issues until the Iranians stopped enriching uranium, which they're still doing. Why the change?
Well, let me be very clear that the U.S. demand for a precondition for the suspension of Iranian enrichment and reprocessing prior to negotiations stands. And in fact, what Bill Burns will do is he will go to demonstrate the unity of the P5+1, as we call it, Russia, China, and the 3 European countries. He will go to demonstrate that we're unified. He will go to affirm that the United States fully backs the package. By the way, I signed the letter transmitting that package. And he will receive the Iranian answer. He will also make very clear that there will be no negotiation in which the United States is involved until there's a suspension of their enrichment and reprocessing.
So is this just a one-shot deal?
Of course, he will be listening intently to see if the Iranians demonstrate that they are ready to accept the condition, the demand. And by the way, it's not a U.S. demand. It is now a demand that is enshrined in 3 separate Security Council resolutions. And he will listen, and if Iran is ready to suspend, then the United States will be there. But it's very important to recognize that this is to reinforce a position that we've held since 2000.
But you acknowledge this is a change.
I acknowledge that what we've done is to make a step that we think demonstrates to everyone our seriousness about this process. But what has not changed is that the United States is determined to have negotiations only when Iran has suspended its enrichment and reprocessing. That's when the United States can join.
This is what you said back on June 3rd.
If Iran suspends its enrichment and reprocessing activities, I will join my UN Security Council colleagues. I'll meet with my Iranian counterpart. I'll do it anytime, anywhere, on any issue.
Now, could you envisage you're doing what the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs is now doing?
I am prepared to go and talk to my counterpart any place, anytime, anywhere. But there really must be a suspension, verifiable suspension, of their enrichment and reprocessing.
What about just participating in a meeting, listening in, along the lines of what the Undersecretary is doing?
I think everybody understands, and we've talked to our counterparts in the P5+1, that this is an opportunity for Iran. Very often we hear, Wolf, well, we're not sure that the United States is really behind this. Well, I signed the letter. Now Bill will go to receive the response. It's a bookend. I transmitted the proposal. He will receive the response. That should give the Iranians every indication of how strongly the United States supports.
So this is really designed as an incentive to them to do, from your perspective, the right thing.
That's right. That's right. And it is, by the way, a very clear message also that there is complete unity on both tracks, because, of course, we've submitted this proposal to the Iranians, but we've also designated Iranian banks and other entities. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Europeans designated Bank Melli, a major Iranian bank. Major companies are pulling out of Iran, like Total, which has pulled out of gas and oil deals there. And so the world is sending Iran a message on both tracks. First of all, there are consequences for continuing to defy the will of the international community. Continued economic isolation, continued isolation that is leading to an ever-worsening economic situation in Iran, and on the other hand, a pathway out. Suspend and negotiate.
Because the Iranians are sending sort of mixed messages as well. They got their missile test that we all saw only the other day. They're continuing, by your account, to enrich uranium. John Bolton, who was your United States ambassador to the United Nations, he said this on Thursday. He said, "This is a complete capitulation on the whole idea of suspending enrichment. Just when the administration has no more U-turns to pull, it does another."
Look, John's a private citizen. He can say whatever he wants. But the issue here is sending the Iranians a strong message about American policy and the unity with our allies. That has been our policy since 2006. Now, as to their missile test, we have an answer for that too. It's called missile defense. And we have the very strong work that we're doing to secure our allies in the Gulf. We have the very strong statements the President and others have made. The Iranians know that we will defend our interests. They're not confused about it.
Well, the Israelis, as you know, are especially nervous right now. And the Defense Minister, Ehud Barak, said on July 10th, Israel is the strongest country in the region, has proved in the past that it won't hesitate to act when its vital security interests are at stake. If Israel deems it's necessary to protect its vital security interests, would the U.S. go along with a preemptive Israeli strike?
I think you know, Wolf, that I'm not going to speculate on things that haven't happened. I can tell you that we have consistently talked with the Israelis. We consult about policy toward Iran. We are all committed, as the international community is committed, to a diplomatic path. The President keeps all of his options open concerning Iran. But we believe that there is pressure growing on Iran to do the right thing, as you put it. Now, the Iranians may choose not to do the right thing. And if they choose not to do the right thing, then we'll continue to look at other measures, including potentially going back to the Security Council.
I want to move on to a couple other important issues, but are the Iranians still building a nuclear bomb right now?
Well, the Iranians are certainly building capabilities that would allow them to have a nuclear weapons program should they choose. So the enrichment and reprocessing is, in fact, the long pole in the tent for a nuclear weapons program. Look, the Iranians have been, it's been demonstrated to Iran, we've told Iran, if you want a civil nuclear program, if you're concerned for some reason about energy, there are plenty of ways to have a civil nuclear program as long as you don't enrich and reprocess, the so-called fuel cycle. We've supported the Russian effort to have a civil nuclear plant there where there's a fuel take-back provision. We've supported an idea that the Russians had and that the IAEA has had about perhaps assured fuel supply. It's an idea the President put on the table. There are lots of ways for Iran to have a civil nuclear program, and enrichment and reprocessing isn't necessary.
But you believe they're building a bomb?
Well, I'm concerned, as, by the way, the IAEA is concerned, because they haven't been answering the questions about their activities, that Iran is determined to acquire the capabilities, the technologies that could lead to a nuclear weapon. And I just have to add, of course, they continue to improve their delivery systems, as we've recently seen.
The United States has not had a diplomatic mission in Tehran since 1979. All of us remember those 444 days when American diplomats were held hostage in Iran. But now there's word that you and the Bush administration are thinking of establishing a diplomatic interest section, a diplomatic mission with American diplomats in Tehran, the first time since then. Is that true?
Well, I'm not going to get into our internal deliberations. We are always looking for ways to reach out to the Iranian people. We believe very strongly that the Iranian people they harbor no animosity toward the United States, and we certainly harbor no animosity toward them. We would like to find ways to reach out to them, to make it easier for them to come to the United States, to have access to the United States. But we're always looking for ways to do that.
It sounds like the answer is yes, though.
I said we won't talk about our internal deliberations. We'll look at all the options, and then we'll let you know.
A sensitive internal deliberation question. The Vice President, Dick Cheney, is he on board with all of this outreach that we've been seeing towards Iran?
I'm not going to get into our internal deliberations, but of course the Vice President is a very important part of the national security team. The Vice President and I talk all the time. We talk all of the time with the President about these issues. And ultimately, of course, it's the President who sets the direction.
So, but he's with you, can we say that?
Wolf, it is the President who sets the direction. But the Vice President and I are on very good terms about this issue. We meet frequently about it. He, like I, am concerned that Iran is a dangerous country, that Iran is clever in the use of asymmetric warfare. But I think we also understand, too, that Iran has its vulnerabilities, and we're beginning to systematically exploit those vulnerabilities.
Do you believe there are different schools, different camps in Iran right now?
Well, far be it from me to try to read internal Iranian politics, but I do know that there are mixed voices these days coming out of Iran, that there appears to be debate about the policies of President Ahmadinejad, that there are those who are publicly saying that Iran's policies are costing it in terms of isolation, in terms of its own economic troubles. And obviously, while I'm not going to spend time looking for moderates in Iran, if there are reasonable people who would like to see on Iran on another course, and who would be more responsive to the needs of Iran's people, that would be worth pursuing. The way for Iran to show that, of course, is to suspend its enrichment and reprocessing.